How do we make sense of this ongoing European debt crisis? Up to now, the dirty little secret is that the solution to every single bailout is that the bill for more and more individual and institutional debt is being passed on to people that had nothing to do with the debts in the first place. Now, politically, Europe has been turned from a democracy into a bankocracy, where economic policy is being run almost exclusively for the interests of the banks. By siding with the banks, the governments are playing a dangerous game and becoming more and more detached from the people. That's why the European elite are petrified of any talk of referendums. So why ask the people to vote on things that might actually affect them? In the first 10 years of the euro, huge amounts of money moved all around the eurozone as banks mistook no exchange rate risk for no risk at all. Now, how wrong were they? Now, governments owe money to other governments, countries owe money to other countries, which they can never ever pay back. There are only two ways out of any debt crisis. Either you squeeze the debtor, or you forgive the debtor and you move on. Now, given that most debtor countries, Italy, Spain, Ireland and Portugal, happen to be Catholic, let's look at this from a quasi-religious or cultural perspective. The Catholic way of dealing with guilt and dealing with debt is you go to confession, you say sorry, you do a little bit of penance. It's the kind of financial equivalent of 5 Hail Marys and an Our Father. All is ultimately forgiven and you move on. The banks that lent the money take the losses, which they should, because that is how capitalism works. It's something called co-responsibility, and this means that the lender and the borrower are both liable. Now, of course, we can do the opposite. We can take the Protestant route, where the sinner is the borrower, not the lender, and the debtor, the borrower, is forced to suffer, enduring everlasting economic damnation by years of austerity. But when you actually think about it, this isn't really Max Weber's Protestantism we're talking about. It's more Karl Marx than Max Weber. But it's only Marx for rich people. Because when things are going well, the bankers pay themselves a fortune. And then when things go pear-shaped, they don't pay for their mistakes. You do. For the fat cats, it's a case of heads I win, tails you lose. But what about the countries themselves? And the way economics works is there's a problem with austerity, because austerity is supposed to solve a debt crisis, but it doesn't make it any more likely that the debtor will be able to pay back debt if you squeeze him. In fact, the opposite is the case. Ireland has had austerity for 3 years and things are getting worse. Similarly, Greece. Somebody clever, now I can't exactly remember who it was, whether it was Einstein or Roy Keane, once said that the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, this is exactly what Europe is doing. The more austerity we have, the less growth. The less growth, the less tax revenue. Consequently, you can't pay back the original debt because you don't have any tax. It's a bit like putting somebody in a debtor's prison. Go back to Victorian England, where you put a guy in debtor's prison to punish him for being in debt. But by being in jail, he can't pay off the debt because he can't work. So everybody loses. This week, European leaders are going to meet in Brussels to rubber stamp the latest French and German inspired bailout. The latest move is to, now believe it or not, outlaw government borrowing in a recession. But anyone who knows anything about economics knows that a recession is part of the ebb and flow of the economy. But Germany doesn't like this ebb and flow, so it wants to make it illegal. But making something illegal doesn't mean it's going to go away. For example, you could make heart disease illegal, but it doesn't mean it's going to go away. The crux of the issue is they are misdiagnosing the problem. Take Ireland as an example. Ireland is the canary in the coal mine, because what happened in Ireland 3 years ago is happening all over Europe right now. A good way to think about this is think of Woody Allen. He's neurotic, he's anxious, he doesn't know what to do next. That's what happens in an economy when the balance sheet is broken. People are terrified, they're neurotic, they don't spend, and the less they spend, the less other people around them spend, and suddenly the economy goes into a downward spiral. And as a consequence of that, the balance sheet will get worse, not better. We all know that you make a balance sheet better, not by adding more debt to it, but by adding less debt to it. In this type of situation, this Woody Allen type recession, people do not spend, they save and save and save. But if people are saving and no one is spending, how do you maintain even a modest level of activity in the economy? Somebody's got to spend, and if the government doesn't spend, who will? Now the problem with the German idea is they want to force all governments to stop spending. So the economy will collapse. Germany and France and the elite are selling this new big idea they have as a fiscal union. This is nothing of the sort. A fiscal union, as envisaged by Germany and France, actually penalises countries that are in trouble rather than doing what it should do, which is help them when they are in trouble. This isn't a friendly union, it is a vindictive straitjacket put in place to help banks, not countries. Now contrast this with a real fiscal union, the American fiscal union. Years ago, I worked as a dishwasher in the late 1980s in Boston. Boston was booming, and then it crashed. Automatically, the unemployed Bostonians paid less tax to the American government and received more transfers from the American government. That is how a real fiscal union works. In the good times, the boom regions pay more, but in the bad times, they receive more. Now this smooths the business cycle, and the depressed region has a chance to recover. If Boston had been in a German and French style fiscal union, Boston would have been punished, not helped, and its post-boom depression would have gone on for years and years, rather than what actually happened was a quick recovery because the rest of America helped it out. The German solution will only cause a recession or more recessions in the periphery. This will cause money to flow into Germany, not out of Germany, because the risk of default in the periphery increases. And in time, much of Europe will begin to look like Greece, teetering on the edge. As money flows into Germany, German bond yields fall, Greece will default, and this will give the others permission to do likewise, because a default in Greece sets off a domino effect all over Europe, because Europeans will say, well, if the Greeks can do it, why can't we? Is it any wonder right now that the price of gold is firm, that the yield on German bonds are falling, and that the euro is weakening against the dollar? What is happening is France and Germany are bulldozing their attitude through the economies of the rest of the periphery of Europe. In the process of trying to save the euro, France and Germany are actually destroying the European Union. And this will go on for a while, but ultimately the people will stand up and say, enough. Don't say you haven't been warned.
Rock